So, in my last BBC, there was an interesting conversation and trying to understand this whole concept of belonging. And then we ended up having some people respond with some comments, some questions. So I wanted to, and it was interesting because two of them were exactly alike, their question. And so instead of going back to the book regarding belonging versus othering, when the belonging yearning due to self-grasping and whoever what else kind of goes off the rails and gets into this very strange othering kind of mind, is I actually remembered an experience that I personally had that is quite a good example of how the need for belonging to connect to relationship kind of went off the rails with the group to where it became an othering experience and that I had to actually unbelong myself from this group. So I thought best to share it personally rather than to continue to read somebody else's research and data. I'm sure we all have our own version. So both of the folks who responded said, one of them said, if the need to belong is based on self-grasping and self-centeredness or self-cherishing, then it is powered by craving and attachment, and any happiness it produces would be temporary. Othering would be the predictable result unless the group to which one belongs is perhaps motivated by bodhicitta, great compassion, equalizing, exchanging self and others. Their experience is how loyalty, this person said, I've had an experience where loyalty to a group is prioritized over ethical conduct, and that you become ostracized if you don't conform to the groupthink. Okay, so this is how belonging goes off the rails. Another person wrote, she said, how can we address our natural need to belong in a skillful way? Learning to stay connected to others with compassion without getting trapped in groups that are detrimental for our practice or be trapped by attachment and projection from self-grasping ignorance. Right? So the fear of this mind of wanting to connect. Because one of the things that, right off the bat, thinking about this before I get into my story, is that, when His Holiness, he firmly believes that fundamentally the human mind, its nature is kindness, and that we are social beings. So a lot of our life is trying to build relationship, to connect, as Marshall Rosenberg says. This is the fundamental nature of the human heart. And His Holiness says this quite confidently. He says it a lot, and I happen to concur with this. However, it can go off the rail. But the kind and good heart, in retrospect to this story I'm about to share, it needs companions. The good heart by itself is very vulnerable to the self-centered thought, the self-grasping ignorance, which is continually waiting in the wings with its bag of 8 worldly concerns, its wrong views, its afflictions, ready to basically bind and gag that good heart, put it in the corner somewhere, and have its way with us. So it needs wisdom, it needs equanimity to accompany it, it needs ethical conduct, it needs integrity. So the good heart needs to have companions on its journey as it tries to manifest out of the human mind to be able to have these relationships. Because if we're going to generate bodhicitta, we can't do it in a vacuum. We need to have these relationships with sentient beings. But it's vulnerable in that it needs some accompaniment. So I want to share the story, which I remembered, of my little experience, and it's in the book. This is truth today. It's in Venerable's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And there is a verse in here, and what she did, which it was such so much fun to see her doing this book on the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, is that she asked a number of her students way back when. This is in the early 2005, 2006, whatever, when we first got the Abbey going. She said, I want you to go through the verses of the 37 practices and find one of those that you can relate to, that you use to change your mind or refers to something that happened in your life. So we get to verse 6. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So that was the verse that I remembered because I had an experience in my life that really showed what happens when you don't go for a spiritual mentor or for spiritual friends. And I am the one who had the on page 60, Charlatananda. Now, she put me, I'm Susan in the book, but I want to tell you right now that this is my story. And I want to read this to you because this is how the need for belonging, the need to connect, the need to be part of something bigger than your life, if that belonging doesn't have some sort of integrity to it. Anybody who's got charisma, anybody that's dashing and articulate and handsome and wise, you can get hook, line, and sinker, which is what happened in this experience. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'll kind of finish up with my now new thoughts. And this is not just putting your faith in a qualified spiritual teacher, but also the group of students that surround them. Putting your trust and faith in a qualified spiritual teacher is one of the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has spoken of this many times, urging everyone to take time to investigate anyone they are considering as a spiritual mentor, encouraging us to observe, see if they teach the pure Dharma, if they behave as they teach others to behave, and to observe their students to see if they are trying to live ethically and have kind hearts. Only then can we decide to take a certain person as our spiritual guide. Now, this was pre-Dharma. Before I met the Dharma, I had not heard this wise advice. Thus, I experienced many afflictive states of mind by following someone who was, to put it mildly, a shyster. It was in 1988. I was 35 years old. I was living north of New York City. I was part of a therapy group that met weekly with a man who was quite talented in facilitating people's inner journeys. He was not clairvoyant, but he could really connect to what was really alive in you and really walk you through some difficult experiences. He introduced the group to a supposed psychologist who he said was quite amazing, encouraged all of us to meet him. So there's a group of 15 of us, 18 of us that went down and met this psychologist. From what he said, the psychologist apparently had supernatural powers. When he blew on people's heads, their entire body would fill with light. He also had the ability to make people, sometimes entire groups of people, disappear. He was a magician. We were all curious about him. Over a period of 6 months, our group and our friends, about 30 of us all together, went to see the psychologist. He offered us individual times on a couch where he would blow on the top of your head, and indeed your whole body was filled with light. And the bliss that came was incredible. He was charismatic and handsome, almost exotic looking, with a lovely face and charming accent. Although married, he had an unusual interest in us young women in the group and would invite us to his hotel where we would entertain him. It was very interesting. I was one of those foolish women. The cost of this 20-minute head-blowing session was $100. And within 3 months, I had spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars getting my fix of this light, because you walked out of there feeling really blissed out, like you were clear, you could do anything, you were just filled with joy. Those who questioned his behavior or his fee were guilt-tripped and shamed in front of the group. The pressure to show up each week and just hang around in his fancy apartment until your turn got very intense. Along with this came a lot of jealousy over who would be his favorite that day. Afterwards, we would take him out to dinner at expensive restaurants, drinking for hours. We're not talking beer, folks. We're talking scotch. We're talking Manhattans. We're talking whiskey. We're talking Jack Daniels. And spending money many of us didn't have. We were like addicts, all out for sense pleasure deluxe. The karma of this, when I look back at it in retrospect, is just mind-blowing. Through a series of misadventures, his deceptive lies were revealed. He was basically a magician. He thought he was Jesus. He thought our friend who facilitated our group was going to be like a St. John the Baptist. I mean, we took hook, line, and sinker this whole man's story. We finally came out of our fog and stopped attending the sessions. He had made thousands of dollars off a group of gullible, naive people who just wanted to feel special, with someone who had a few magic tricks up his sleeve. When I finally came to my senses, my savings were gone. I was $1,200 in debt and barely employed. It took me years to get over the deception of this shyster and to make peace with my own blindness. Later, when I met a Dharma teacher, I spent a lot of time examining their behavior and their life before deciding to initiate teacher-student relationship. I checked out the quality of the teachings and observed that they helped me. Her students were kind and sincere, which gave me the confidence that if I followed her guidance, I would become like them. Sometimes I struggle with doubt and trust issues, which are leftovers from this wild, foolish, and painful experience. However, with a lot of compassion and wisdom, my teacher is guiding me through it and out to the other side, for which I'm very grateful. When I look at this section of my life, it just hit me the other day when I looked at this again. I can understand what's going on in the political circles right now. I don't know it's got to be karma to be able to meet somebody that without even discernment, without even wisdom, logic, reason, you are just totally mesmerized, enthralled, bedazzled by these people. There's nothing on the back end of this. There's nothing special about this person at all, except not being very ethical. He was a shyster. But there's something about the karma that you stop thinking for yourself. And all you want to do is you want to be special. You want to be in the inner circle. And you can't say anything. I lost a very dear friendship because she dared to question what he was doing. I threw her out of my life. And so when I see what's going on and what's going on in the world right now, I understand the confusion. And I understand that you give up all of your wisdom. You give up all of your integrity. And it's hard to release oneself. It's like it's an addiction. So looking at this belonging mechanism, I was in a course, I was in a period of my life that I was lonely. I was looking for a spiritual path. I had been in other groups and I've narrowed it down to this particular therapy circle, and then it opened up to this opportunity with this person. But the belonging didn't have a lot. It had an urgency to it. It had a loneliness to it. I need to fill something up in my life that I couldn't fill inside my own heart. And so by the time I got there, I was just so ready to just be taken advantage of. And so so looking back on it, I don't think it's the belonging that's the problem. I think that it's the lack of the wisdom and the ability to reason ourselves through. Because if I had stopped wanting to belong and had just said, I'm done with this stuff, I'm not going to join any groups, I'm not going to get into organizations, forget spiritual path, just screw it, I would have never followed my belonging to the Dharma. I would have never joined. I wouldn't be here if I had just said, I can't do this. And the pain was too great because I'd been so fooled. I'd been so taken advantage of. And I let it happen by not having the qualities that you need to examine our relationships to friends and groups and institutions. So if I had stopped there and had put my head in the sand and turned my back on my good heart, I don't think I would have met the Dharma. I would have just gone about my little nihilistic life, getting the pleasure that I could, and basically being a nomad like I was for years after this experience. I just cut myself off. But I didn't, because the good heart that abides in here, doesn't go away. It gets gagged, it gets tied, it gets put on the shelf, it gets run over a few times. But it is accompanied by this sincere yearning to understand the truth about life. And then to have the karma, the virtuous karma to ripen, that you find the Dharma and you find a qualified teacher. It took me months to kind of get on board with Venerable. I kept going, I don't want that to happen again. And because I came in it with a little bit more clear-eyed, clear-headed, and a little bit more, I'm going to take my time, so that when I was ready, then I had some information that was helpful to say whether this was a journey that I wanted to try out. But it's extremely painful, but I understand the hook. I understand the bedazzled mind. And you can do some really things that you would never, ever do. I let my morals go to hell in a handbasket. So I just wanted to share that the self-grasping ignorance, the self-centered thought are waiting in the wings for this good heart to go out there on its own without any wisdom, without any discernment, without any, you know, clarity, that he can get into all sorts of trouble. And so I really want to just say that don't give up on belonging. And one of the stories also that I want, it's not the panacea for the end of dukkha, but it can supply us with some good friends, give us an opportunity to help others, to grow our good qualities. But we have to be careful. And there's a person that I had shared this with, a group not far from here, and he had the same thing happen with his family, who he loved more than anything. And there was something that happened financially within the family unit, and one of the members of the family went off the rails and just went crazy. And the hostility and divisive speech and the craziness. He said, I had to unbelong myself from my own family because his integrity, his compassion, he just couldn't take it. It was too harmful for his own peace of mind. So he said, I had to step back and untangle myself and untie myself from a family that I love more than anything. I don't know what's going to happen, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't control anything. So, there's a lot of good things about belonging. I mean, I love belonging to this community. I mean, it's been the greatest thing that's happened in my life. But we have to be very skillful. We have to make sure that we make that decision of, where is it going? What's my motivation? What's the motivation of the group? Is there anybody in charge who's got more of a say than other people? I mean, you really have to navigate this sincere wish to become part of something bigger than ourselves, but to have all these beautiful qualities to assist us in that journey. We can have a lot of wonderful companions along the path if we just really use our wisdom correctly.